Elijah says, listen to me. Go and fix me one first. And there'll be plenty to left over for a long, long time. Now, that's what she did. And God provided. Amen. Everything's just happy, right? Everything's going good. Then the verses that we read, starting with verse 17, where it says, all I have enough is to fix for me and my son, and it'll be our last meal, and then we're going to die. Elijah says, listen to me. Go and fix me one first. And there'll be plenty to left over for a long, long time. Now, that's what she did. And God provided. Amen. Everything's just happy, right? Everything's going good. Then the verses that we read, starting with verse 17, where it says, after these things. Say that again after me. After these things.
After these things.
You see, after these things, what things is he talking about? What he's talking about is when he went to King Ahab, and he got in King Ahab's face and said, there's going to be some trouble and no rain, and it's all because of you and your wife Jezebel that these people will suffer and there'll be death all over this land. After these things, after he spent 3 years in the brook, being fed by the ravens and drinking of the water of the brook, after these things, and then God says, I want you to go 100 miles to Zarephath, and when you get there, there'll be a woman there to take care of you. Well, you would have thought this, as soon as he got there, there was nothing but trials. Here he's done walked 100 miles. He sees this woman, and all of a sudden he asks her to do something, and basically she said, I just got enough for me and my son, and we're going to die. But then he proved her how the Lord provided. And then it says, after these things. Well, after these things, what took place is this woman came to him and said, oh, you man of God, I know what you came for. You came to point out my sins, tell me whatever I've done wrong, and then you're going to kill my son because of it. Fine. Thank you very much. Folks, Elijah didn't need this. Amen? This is a lot. You've got to think, to traveling the 3 years at the brook, knowing that he's got a contract over his head, he don't need some woman here accusing him of killing her son. But isn't that the way it normally is when things go bad for believers? They begin to blame other people. They begin to blame the systems. They begin to blame God. And always say, why me? Amen? And if you notice in verse 17, as he says, after these things, all these things are happening. And let me say this. For you that live a Christian life, have you ever noticed that sometimes living the Christian life, bad things happen back to back? Anybody ever notice that? Have you ever noticed living the Christian life, sometimes bad things happen, watch this, back to back to back? Have you ever noticed sometimes living the Christian life, watch this, bad things happen back to back to back to back? Amen? It happens. And people say, oh, the Christian life, you just go to church, do the best you can, and everything's fine. Yeah, right. Well, you know, when you live the Christian life, sometimes God's going to put you in places you don't understand. And sometimes God's going to put people in your life that you see as unfruitful. But listen very carefully. God knows what He's doing. God has a plan. It's not for us to really question God. We may ask Him and all like this, but it's our responsibility to stay faithful to God through all all these things, even though we don't understand the people and the places. This woman's cried out, and she says, "You're just punishing me for my sins by taking my son's life. And you call yourself a man of God." You know what? If you're going to live the Christian life, you better have some big skin. Because living the Christian life, it ain't a life for wimps. It's not. Amen anyway. Number one, God will put you in places in your life that you may not understand. Number two, God will put people in your life you might see as unfruitful. And then number three, God will provide provision in your life you might see as unbelievable. If you notice at the end, in fact, I love Elijah's prayer in verse 20. Basically, Elijah don't know what to say. Elijah's tired. Elijah has a contract on his head. Elijah's wore out. Elijah don't know what's going on. All he knows that he's had nothing but trouble ever since he got to Zarephath. All he knows is things are not going right and things are not going as planned, that he is in a melting pot there. He's in a trial situation here. Things got better for a little while, and then all of a sudden it just backfired in his face, and all of a sudden this woman comes up and accuses him of the death of her son, and he goes to God and says, "Give me your son." He gets away, and he basically says, "God, what are you doing? What do I do now? God, please give this boy's breath back to him. Please." Elijah never experienced this before. In fact, this is the first place in the Bible where somebody has been risen from the dead. And Elijah was just shocked. I mean, I imagine he was happy to get out of the brook and get away there and get into the city. Maybe some fellowship. Maybe get around other believers. Maybe this. But it didn't happen that way. You see, God will provide provisions in your life that you might see as unbelievable. If you listen to Elijah and you listen to his prayer in verse 20, I mean, he really don't know what to do except go to God and say, "God, give this boy his breath back. Give him life back." Let me ask you something. Have you ever gotten to the point in your life where you didn't know how to pray about a situation? You really didn't know how to pray? Maybe it's been somebody who's in a hospital, in intensive care. And the doctor says, "You know what? This person's not going to make it. If it does, if he or she does, they will not live a quality of life. They will become a vegetable." How do you pray? Or how do you pray when you know or you're pretty sure it's just a matter of time? And all that's keeping them alive is a breathing machine or the respirators and all that is. That's the only thing that's keeping them alive. How do you pray?